We made this.
Hello everyone and welcome to episode 71 of Pick a Disc. I'm your host Matt Latham and this is the podcast where someone picks a disc for whatever reason they want to and then we talk about it. And the disc picker today is Rylan from the Punch Drunk Vinyl podcast to talk about the 1975's self-titled debut album, the 1975, because it'd be very weird if the self-titled album was not named the band's name, wouldn't it? But hey ho, we talk about Matty Healy, the lead singer, we talk about the impact that it has on other bands, a bit of the production that the bands have done, and about the band in general. If you listen to the show before, you get an idea what to expect. If you've never listened to the show before, you're in for a treat. He says, self-hyping himself. But before I go and hit play on the interview with Rylan, just a bit of housekeeping rules. If you like the podcast, share alike, write us a review on whatever things you use to review podcasts on, and follow us on Twitter /Instagram /Facebook. We're just under Pick a Disc. If you just type in Pick a Disc into one of there, it's probably going to be me. And there's also a Discord server if you want to come and join on and have a chat about what you're listening to in terms of music, and if you want any new discoveries you want to share with people. So I think that is it. So without dithering on and muttering on for too much longer, let's talk to Rylan. So Rylan, a few times in episodes that I've been tagged in stories on Instagram where he says, "Oh, I've been introduced to this band because of this podcast," and one of the latest ones was Wolf Alice, and then you had Blue Weekend and stuff, and which is good because anyone who's listened to the episode knows that myself and Jen, who's on that, they're one of my favourite bands of all time. So anyone who finds that band, it's just like an extra person.
Man, I was really stoked to find that band. Also, I mean, they have a lot in common with the band that we're going to talk about, I think, too. But I was blown away by Wolf Alice, so I was stoked that you showed me those guys. That's also why I listened to your podcast, because of those things. Like, I found a lot of interesting stuff through this, like weird things about Dexy's Midnight Runners and stuff, things like that, like interesting little tidbits that I've learned over time about, like, UK versions versus US versions of stuff, and then which that's something that kind of like I didn't know a ton about prior, and then finding new bands is like how I learned about new bands now is not from like, friends or things. It's like Instagram and like other podcasts and stuff. Like it's weird how in this time we're in, like that's how we learned about new bands. It's like, oh, cool, this podcast I listened to talked about this band that I love. Now I love.
I'm assuming you've delved into like My Love Is Cool and Vision of Life as well and stuff. So have you listened to all three Wolf Alice albums yet?
Actually, I haven't yet. So I'm in love with their newest album so much that the My Love Is Cool podcast you did, I'm still like listening to that, and I have not delved into the record yet. I keep wanting to pause to listen to it, which is really funny because every time you guys talk about a song, I'm like, I should stop and listen to this album. And I'm like, well, I'm listening to the podcast, so hold on. And then I go back and forth in my head, and it's like number one on my to-do listen list, is to listen to that record.
Yeah, but and I'm not going to delve into, because if we start talking about Wolf Alice, we'll be talking for. I think literally myself and Jenna had to stop ourselves from talking else. We would have talked for another hour. But they're on a label called Dirty Hit, which tangentially is related to this episode, isn't it? So, Rylan, why don't you tell all of listeners the album you've picked, please?
Yeah, so this was like a hard choice for me, by the way. It took forever to figure it out. I think we talked for like maybe a month before I nailed it down. Yeah. But I picked the 1975 self-titled album, The 1975, which is on Dirty Hit as well. Yeah. Yeah,
I think there was actually the first sign to that album and first sign to the record, one of the first signings to that record label. And I want to briefly talk about Dirty Hit in a bit later on, but before we do that, I wanted to talk about your history with the 1975. So how did you discover the band?
Oh man, this is a great story because so 1975 for me, like I fell in love with them right away, but I had found out about them. It was like, so 2013 is when this album came out. And back then, the way I found music, like I was really big into like in that time in my life anyway, I was really big into like Apple products and stuff. Like I had an iPhone and like I just got my first like Apple TV, and then like I remember they were doing iTunes festivals. Remember those? You ever like see those things? They like iTunes festivals where they'd have like a live show and they'd air it on iTunes and stuff.
Yeah, I'm not much. I'm not an Apple fan, if I'm honest. So I had an iPod like back in the day, but then I kind of then got a Microsoft. I think I got a Creative Zen thing, and then I had a smartphone.
Yes.
Well,
I was like a big Apple fanboy for a couple of years, and I've kind of like gone away from that now. But I was in that time of like 2010 to 14, maybe. I was a big fan of that stuff, and they did this thing called iTunes Festival, and they did like live streamings of. I don't know if they were live streamings or not, recorded probably, but of this big festival. And so the band that I really wanted to see on that festival back then in 2013 was Bastille. And I really liked that band a lot. They had like they have a lot of awesome energy, and their records are really good. But the 1975 opened for them on that iTunes Festival touring. And so I was like, I'll watch the opener first, of course. And I watched that, and I instantly fell in love with Matt Healy and the band. Like I felt like I was fanboying from the moment I saw them. Like they were just like, their sound was awesome. Their energy was great. Their attitude they had, the stage presence, even though they were like a brand new band and they just kind of got their start. I was all about it. Like it was just like it hit this note in me that was like, okay, this is the stuff I like. This is the music I like. These are the lyrics I enjoy. Like this is the way I feel about music. It connected with me right away. And so I bought tickets to see them immediately after watching them live the first time on a streaming service. I mean, yeah. Anyway,
and that was is that 2013? Was that 2013?
Yeah, it was. It was right when the album had came out, and it was. So it was 2013. It was like September-ish. The album, I think, it just came out. They had a bunch of EPs and singles and stuff that came out prior to that. Yes, they opened for Bastille, and they'd kind of done that to kind of get their start open for a lot of bands that hadn't really headlined anywhere yet. And then that's where I found them, and I just like went nuts for them.
Okay, so why this album? So
why did I pick this album?
Yeah. What is it about you?
I didn't really. So there's a lot of reasons why I picked it over their other ones. They've got 4 records out now. Actually, I don't know if this is my favorite one, but I like it because it's, it is their first record, but it is what got me into them too. So I actually had this like really weird realization yesterday when I was taking my notes and practicing for this, is that there's like the straight album, and then there's like a deluxe version that has all of the singles and EPs they put out prior to that album release. And the deluxe version is like 20 songs, and the regular album's like 10, right? But I realized that actually what I fell in love with was like the deluxe version, all these other songs that were these singles they'd first put out to get their start, and they're really, really cool. But I picked this record just because of that. Like it was like, I think it kind of defines them as a band, even though it is their first record. That's actually going to be a defining moment for any band probably. But what I liked is that it was, for a band's first album, it was like pretty like out there record. Like I think they took a lot of risks with it. There's a lot of weird sounds. There's a lot of funky stuff they do. They like genre bend up and down. It's like they have like 80s synth pop, and they're kind of soul like, and they've got some R&B songs, and they like, and then they've got just a ton of just straight pop. It's a kind of all over the place album. And I think it's really cool because it defines them as who they are, but also they were willing to take that risk. Okay,
and. Yeah, and assuming this was the first album of theirs that I'd listened to, because it was the only one out at the time. So, that's nice story. I think, I think when I first started getting digital media, because I originally did have like an iPod. I did originally, my first kind of lot was like iTunes, and I think it was around the time that I had my first job as well, which was like about 2008, 2009. So I had disposable income.
Which
I don't know about other music fans. I don't know if other music fans have ever mentioned this on any other podcast, but having disposable income when you're a music fan, it's mate, there's this thing you can do. You can buy music, which you can keep. It's
right.
Like, I found that.
And all your money on it.
Yeah, and it was like, because I can buy all these MP3s. Oh crap! I've just spent 50 quid in one in like 10 minutes. It's like, okay, it wasn't the iTunes Festival, but I do know that discovering Slow Club, because We're Dead was like one of their like free track. They had like a free track like every week, and like it was basically
yeah.
So you click on this page and you can download this track to try it, and it was full of all these comments, and every single comment, no matter what song it was a bunch of people that hated the song. But I remember kind of getting it that way.
Of course, it was.
Yeah. So so iTunes had its admittedly had its benefits and its positives, I think, but So the 1975. So for 1975, for those who don't know, 1975 are a British pop rock band formed in 2002 in Wilmslow, Cheshire. Now based in Manchester, the band consists of lead vocalist, producer, lyricist and rhythm guitarist Matty Healy, lead guitarist Adam Hahn, bassist Ross McDonald and drummer/producer George Daniel. And the band's pretty much formed together when they was at secondary school, and they played gigs as teenagers. These gigs led them to be signed by Dirty Hit. And I think Polydor as well, and they so they started opening for bands as like Bastille, like I said, Bastille, and pretty much then kind of their popularity just slowly started skyrocketing, and pretty much went on from there. I just want to briefly talk about Dirty Hit, because Dirty Hit have a label that's popped up a couple of times on the podcast. I think the only other episode we've had on them has been the Wolf Alice one, because Wolf Alice are on Dirty Hit. Pretty much looking through their artist stuff, there's two of my favourite albums of last year from Dirty Hit, which was Biba Doobie and the Rena Sowiaro albums.
Okay,
But then I was looking back and I was like, I just forgotten how much stuff on there that on Dirty Hit that I probably have listened to or seen in the past.
They've got a ton of great bands, like a ton of great bands that are on there.
Yeah,
you know, Pale Waves is on Dirty Hit.
They're going to get brought up. They're going to get brought up a lot sooner, a bit later on actually. Pale Waves.
Okay.
Pale Waves. The first Marika Hatman album, We Slept at Last, is on there, and I love that album. Yeah, so that's on there as well. And a band called Superfood, and I wasn't at their last ever gig, but I do remember they had the kind of last tour, and they played Mama Roo's in Birmingham, which is kind of like this venue which is made to look like New Orleans. So you'll walk in and you've got all like these kind of outdoor, kind of like almost voodoo style Louisiana kind of architecture. So it's like you're in the Market Square or something in New Orleans and stuff, and
that'd be fun. That sounds cool.
Yeah, so I remember something, but yeah, they've had like, other stuff as well. I think the Japanese House, who I've seen live.
I was going to mention them. I love the Japanese House so much. Her music is amazing. I've never seen them live, but I'm not sure actually how she plays live. Is it a full band?
Yeah, I can't remember it much. Because I went to watch them. I think I was more. There was someone supporting them that I wanted to see more actually. But so the Japanese House as well, and Benjamin Francis Leftwich, who I thought I'd seen, but I keep getting confused with Benjamin Booker just because they've got the same first name for some. Stupid reason, But so
Dirty Hit's got a lot of great bands.
Yeah, Dirty Hit, they're quite up there near. They're not my favourite record label. My favourite record label is Alcopop Records, who just seem to sign everyone in my iTunes, in my MP3, in my library. But that's a whole different question. But yeah, Dirty Hit have this kind of habit of having like some pretty good stuff coming out from there as well. Yeah. So again, top of that for me is Wolf Alice. But that's it. I am not talking. I'm not going to mention them again.
This isn't the Wolf Alice episode. No,
it's not.
I thought about picking their newest album, and I was like, no, I can't do it. Yeah.
But So the 1975, the album. It's the debut album from the British rock band in 1975. It was released on the 2nd of September 2013. It was recorded by record producer Mike Crossy, who has also worked with a bunch of other people that I was surprised with as well, including the band that shall not be now named. And their debut album, which they've also looking at his, I was surprised at how much actually that Mike Crossy has actually done in terms of who he's worked with.
Is he in Arctic Monkeys, I think, or something like that, or is part of that band?
I think he's worked with the Arctic Monkeys.
Yeah,
so I think he did the first EP, and he contributed songs on the second album, but then he's been with like Nothing But Thieves, Razor Like the Kooks, The Enemy. He was also a producer of Blood Red Shoes, Box of Secrets, which is another one of my favourite albums. And also, I'm surprised. I didn't realise that he also did a lot of work with a band called Fickle Friends on their debut album, You Are Somewhere Else. And there's a lot of crossover with that, actually. I don't know if you've heard of Fickle Friends.
No, I haven't. So actually, you mentioned a few bands so far that I'm like, I need to take notes because I need to check out a lot of these bands.
I did think about this. I was thinking like I feel like if any guest so far is going to end up having to take notes of bands that I mentioned, it might.
Yeah. That's I'm doing that right now. I'm like, actually, I'm excited to listen to this later so I can be like, okay, cool. These are the bands I need to check out.
Yeah.
I think we have very similar taste in music. When I see bands that like Wolf Alice that you is a favorite band of yours. Sorry, I said their name, but they are. They're awesome. And so when I was blown away by them, like, oh man, Matt has such great taste in music. It's like all these bands that I also really enjoy. And so whenever you mention a band that I haven't heard yet, I'm like, I need to check that out. Like, cause I know I'm going to like it.
Yeah. Top of that list, Fickle Friends, Fickle Friends, based on kind of like the Power Waves and 1975, I'll be generally surprised because you don't like, they're very much kind of electro synthy as well, so definitely check them out. Written down exclamation points and everything. Just totally all over it. But
I'm
quite surprised at how much this Mike Crossy character has started to crop up, and I only realised that as I was looking into this as well.
That's very cool.
So and he was also, but interestingly enough, also he also had a few things to do with the Blurry Face album by 21 Pilots, which is the album that got me off 21 Pilots, even though I like Vessels, but that's a whole different story. That's a whole other different story.
I'll wait for that episode. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah, if anyone wants to pick Vessels, we'll talk about that. But that was the 1975. So it's their debut album, and I was trying to figure out when I heard of them, and I can't. The 1975, they're a band that I wasn't really familiar with that much. But
that's what I was wondering, actually. I was really surprised that you weren't super familiar with them coming into this, because I was like, oh, they have to be on Matt's radar. Like, I figured they would be, top, maybe top 20 band for you or something like that. So I was surprised.
See, I don't know how I missed. I don't know how I missed it, because I was surprised that I like the album, but it's not something I probably would have actively listened to. I'll explain a bit why a bit later on. But I was
sure.
But I'm trying to figure out how I've heard. I think the 1975 has always been on like the cusp of the radar, and Matty Healy as a name has been involved in, like, particularly in indie circles. Yeah. Like, so basically my Twitter feed is either bands, people making crap jokes, or basically like people who really hate the Conservative government in the UK, and that's basically that's my Twitter thing. And like, but the musicians and the music blogs that I follow as well, who will often talk about kind of like Matty Healy and 1975 and stuff, but I've never really listened to them. And for a long period of time, I just assumed incorrectly that they were also I got them mixed up with Death from Above 1979.
Oh, okay. I could see that. Easy mistake. I mean, honestly, yeah.
It's the name more than anything, I think. But I think that to me, so I double checked, and I think they easily sound different. it's just the name.
They definitely sound different. The name is it right there. Yeah, they sound very different.
Yeah, and I think they changed the name to Death from Above at one point just to stop being confusing and stuff. But I think as Matty Healy, I think he's just been there, but I never really kind of delved in. There was like one of those kind of bands that I never really got into. So like you got other bands like I mean I'm not much into Bastille either. If I'm honest, but I just never clicked with them. But they just as I started, particularly in the last year and a half or so, when I started interacting with other podcasts and stuff, what I've noticed is that his name gets brought up quite a lot. And I know
I think 1975 was brought up in your last episode about Wolf Alice. I think Jenna mentioned 1975 and that.
And I think as I talked about Bieber Doobie on my This Is My Brain on Music podcast, I Guess It On, that Jenna hosts, and Matty Healy also produced that as well. But I think his name started coming up because I know there's people that there's podcasts I interact with who are massive fans of Matty Healy in 1975, who will probably also, because I know some people don't listen to every episode, they only listen to ones they know of, and I know for a fact they will listen to this episode. And then also Matty Healy is one of those characters that whenever I've kind of he's in maybe tweet or something, he's always, how do I phrase this? The fan base for 1975, if you said that they could be the only fan base where if someone says, I don't know how I feel about Matty Healy, they will not take it as an insult.
Yeah, I agree.
And then like you got some, and then like you got, and I've seen memes on like TikTok and Twitter where you got some people who the fan base will begrudgingly go, "Oh, I really like Matty Healy because he's like this. I dislike Matty Healy because he's like this," and it's very weird. It's a very weird thing.
Well, I think what I like about that, so what I like about his personality, I'm glad you brought it up too, because he's like, in my mind, right, he's like classically a performer, right? And that's like the kind of part that I get about him is like, kind of, this is a very like out there like similarity, right? But think about like Morrissey, right, from the Smiths. Like people love to hate him, and there's people that really like him, there's people that really hate the guy, right? Like because he just says some stupid stuff all the time, and he's like really like he's a total showman and like likes drama and yada yada. Matthew Healy's not that kind of extreme.
He's not that extreme.
No, not at all. Not at all, but it's a similar way of like being a performer and being a pop artist and being kind of like he's just a personality, right? Like he has all these things he has to say. He says stuff that like he doesn't give a shit about what he says. He'll say like I was like doing some research and there's like this whole website of like random quotes that he's said of like just just garbage that he's spewed. But some of it's like really funny, some of it's really thoughtful, some of it's really intelligent. He's a pretty smart person, and I really appreciate like a lot of the work he does. I think he's very skilled in what he does musically, and even like some of the political statements he makes are really great too. But he's a big environmentalist and things like that as well. But I like that kind of like I think it draws you into the band a little bit too, and you're like okay, or I guess it could probably also turn you off, where you're like this guy, I don't know,
Yeah, I mean, I've got quite a few bands that I have quite outspoken figureheads or lead singers and stuff. So like lead singers and stuff. But I don't think it's not as extreme as Bono. It's not the extreme of Bono, where Bono just seems to be, well, Bono is his own creature.
Exactly.
He's not Morrissey. He's not Morrissey. No. Just I think you can legitimately like Bono. It's just that whereas Morrissey, you kind of just feel guilty for still liking this myths to the point. To the point, I refer to Morrissey as he's the guy from Johnny Marr's band. He's the singer for Johnny Marr's band. That's how I kind of. That's great.
I should use that now because I'm a huge Johnny Marr fan. Also, I'm a big Smiths fan. I also do like some of Morrissey's music, and I've seen him live a handful of times. But I just the more I hear him talk, the more I'm like, damn it, dude.
The older he gets, he's. Yeah, and again, there's so much stuff we can talk about Morrissey, but I'm not going to. I'm not going to get into that. But
no, but I think, but Matthew Healy's kind of got that, like that, that pop star persona and personality that really just kind of is out there, and I think that that's what kind of gets him that like lover take, kind of thing.
Yeah. I'm also, and I don't understand this feud, and I don't know whether it's actually real or whether it's performative or not, but I'm a big fan of the band Sports Team, and apparently they are in a massive feud with 1975.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something to do with the T-shirt. I think I don't fully understand it, but I just know that Sports Team continually make little jabs at the 1975, and I don't know if it's actually mean spirited or not.
That's funny. Don't. I wonder if it's like dramatic. They do a lot of stuff for performance, and I think that maybe it could be that. I don't know. I don't know anything about it.
I don't know, but. Fans of both have actually kicked off on each other. There have been like Twitter wars between them, I think. But again, I don't think if anyone knows, if anyone can help me figure out how that started, that would be much appreciated. Final thing about Matty Healy as well is that you probably have this probably won't translate at all in the US, but who his parents are blew my mind.
Actually, I read that when I was reading about him, but I don't know who they are.
Yeah. So basically, I think anyone under the age of 29, anyone under the age of like early 30, well, if anyone is younger than me, probably won't really understand who Tim Healy. Tim Healy is an actor who's he was known for playing a character called Dennis in this like very famous sitcom over here called Alpha with His Own Pet. Which is basically about a bunch of like, particularly in the late 80s, where like these miners lost their jobs, so they moved to Germany to try and do stuff. It was quite a strongly politically charged comedy drama, and he's been in loads of them. He's pretty much on TV all the time. He's one of these faces that you'll know. There's actually, I think there's a This Is Your Life, which is, I don't know if you have anything equivalent to that in the US, but it's
it sounds familiar, but okay.
There's a guy originally it was a guy called Michael Aspel who had this big red book, and they'll have a celebrities come on and say, "Do you recognise this voice?" And they'll go, "Oh, he used to be awful at school." And goes, "Well, celebrity, this is your old gym teacher." And then like they'll see all these people, and you're like, and they revisit all these celebrities' lives in this audience stuff. And there's a YouTube clip from, I think, Tim Healy's from like not the year 2000 or the late 90s, and they say, "Oh, we have your son Matthew here," and he's like this 10-year-old Matty Healy saying, "Oh, I'm going to be a pop star when I'm old." He's like, and like, like some people say it's confidence. It can be easily read as arrogance, but it's like this little 10-year-old saying, "I'm going to be a pop star one day," and it's Matty Healy, and I'm like, oh, bloody hell!
Wow, yeah.
And he's his mother, Denise Welch, is a soap actress who was in a long-running show called Coronation Street. It's like 60 years old. So she was in there for a few years. She was also in one called Hollyoaks. She's one of these like faces that you'll recognise immediately. I think at the moment now she is more known for being a host on a show called so for about 2005 to 2013, and then from 2018 till now she hosts a show called Loose Women, and I think the best analog in the US, I think it's very similar to what I think is called The View, where it's like a very female centric kind of lifestyle show.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if it's live or not, but
I like the name a lot better. I think that's a great name.
Yeah,
I'm sure it's a good show.
Yeah, but it's like it's like a daytime show called Loose Women, and she's one of the main hosts on that. But she's also someone who gets in the papers or on the news websites for saying stuff.
Sure.
Saying stuff. I think I've not looked into it.
That's the whole point of the show, I'm sure, is just talking about some.
Yeah, but
trash, you know?
So there's an interesting generation divide, and I don't know where it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be Coronation. There's going to be a bunch of people that if you say, "Oh, do you know who Matt Healy is?" they're going to go no, but then you mention Tim Healy or Denise Welsh. Pretty much anyone who's over 30s and onwards are going to know who Tim Healy and Denise Welsh are. Anyone underneath are not going to know who the parents are, but they'll know Matty Healy. It's a very weird thing and stuff, and like it's like he goes, is he the son of so and so's got a band, doesn't he? Are they any good and stuff, and like they say like, and you'll say, and anyone else you'll just goes, "Oh yeah, they've been in this." The one guy's in like Benidorm and Open All Hours and stuff, and that's his dad. He goes, "Who?" He goes, yeah, you can watch it on iPlayer. Oh, okay. But it's one of those cultural things where it's like it's very weird. Like realizing who his parents were. That's just, again. I think that kind of like weirdness will be lost in the US. I think. But anyone in the UK listening, I'm guaranteed at least a few of them are going to be either they're going to be, "Oh, we knew that," or "Really?" So yeah. But so the chat about the band and Matt Healy is a lot longer than I expected, but then there is a lot. He's a very particular character. So the 1975, the album itself, I think, going back to it, it's kind of like indie pop, kind of like an indie pop album, and it sounds very
much a pop album.
Yeah, it's
synth pop bits.
Yeah, it sounds synthy, but I think a lot of it is because a lot of the guitars in it are quite clean. There's a very clean guitar sound, so it's not they don't really use distortion as much throughout it. And what I found, I think, when I listened to it, it reminded me so much of a load of other stuff that I used to listen to, particularly when I'm my early to mid 20s. So a lot of stuff from like 10 years ago. Well, no, beyond that even. It's like this is nearly 8 years old now. So so stuff from like the late noughties, just before this came out. So I did write a bunch of stuff down. So it reminds me quite a lot of the Wombats, who are the Wombats, but less indie. And I think the Wombats are kind of like one of my favourite bands, but I think they're a lot more self-deprecating, I think, than perhaps 1975 are, and particularly as well.
I don't know. Well, maybe.
I don't know. I don't know. What I found, I think I found myself kind of still kind of. Then again, now this is like nearly 10 years now of listening to the Wombats almost, so I might be biased towards them a little, but I found myself kind of link a lot more with them. And there's a band called White Lies, who've got.
I don't know them.
They're like, I think they're like London based, but they're kind of like very dark synth, synthy stuff. They're a lot more leaning towards perhaps the Gary Newman style dark synth stuff.
Sure, okay.
all the cars that we had in this, almost like the cars as well. For previous episode, a couple of episodes ago. Yes, they kind of reminded me a lot like that. Almost like Two Door Cinema Club and the Cure as well.
Yep.
So almost like
very 80s pop influence, very 80s synth influence, I think, in a lot of ways. And that's what I think that attracted me to it, because I'm a big fan of a lot of that music too. I also like the self-deprecating part. I'm glad you mentioned too, because I feel like 1975 has a lot of that. The Wombats for sure, I think, also have a lot of that self-deprecation. But when you listen to the lyrics of 1975 and you read those things, it's like there's a lot of darkness in there. There's a lot of self-deprecation, especially in the early stuff. Like in this album, and then like in the next couple, there's just a bunch of heaviness to it that I like a lot too.
Yeah. So in terms of like the Send It Reminded Love, when you first listened to it, what kind of stuff were you into? Because you mentioned Bastille, so I can kind of see how that kind of crossed over into this. What other stuff did you like beforehand that you think kind of played into liking this? If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I didn't think about that too much. I've always been a big fan of like about synth pop music and like 80s music. So like you mentioned the Cure, things like that. The Cars, really big in my life. Bastille, actually, like I liked a lot of their stuff, but I didn't I wasn't a huge fan of them. They actually did some covers that were my favorites. Like they did like this thing called Other People's Heartache, and they did a bunch of cover songs. That's like my favorite of their work, actually. Their version of like Rhythm of the Night is like probably my favorite. But it's funny. So like I really wanted to see that live. That's kind of why I wanted to watch them. And then 1975 came up, and I was just really stoked on that, because it kind of like hit a different chord in me about that. The self-deprecation was there, the sadness was there, which I've always been like a fan of the sad bastard music type stuff too, and I'm a big fan of that, like the indie acoustic sad stuff. A lot of those
sad
really
bastard music. I've never heard it like that. I like that term, the sad bastard music.
It's how I define a lot of stuff. And actually, it's funny when I introduce myself to people and ask me about like what music I listen to, and I say that, I say like, oh, I listen to a lot of sad bastard music, and they're like, what do you mean? And then I say a couple things like, oh, I like that kind of stuff too, and then they're like, actually, yeah, that's pretty dark. I don't know.
But you say that. I mean, like with the Cure stuff. We mentioned Johnny Marr's band, the Smiths. There's a lot of there's a lot of self-deprecation on that. There's a lot of very kind of clean guitar. Johnny Marr playing as well. And again, the Manchester link. There's Manchester
Link. That was
Manchester
a big part
Link
for me
as well.
too.
Yeah. Manchester Link as well. It kind of worked. I can kind of see that genetic, like genetic kind of music taste run through. So knowing like you're kind of into the 1980s style of music, particularly with either synth sounds that aren't actually made by synths. Like, so you got that kind of like weird sounds that can create with guitars and stuff. I can understand how that would appeal to you for this album.
I like a lot of that. Like that. Yeah, this album has a lot of that like out there weird sound and stuff, but it's also all very intentional too. So I like that they put a lot of like funky noises in there, a lot of like crashing sounds and things like that are all like super intentional in how they play out. And some of it I thought was pretty genius in some of their songs, where they have like they have the iPhone iMessage sound when you like the whoosh when you send a message, like is it in one of their songs, like this weird stuff like that actually kind of like is small notes that are really intentional and kind of hit you, those pings of like, oh wow, that's neat, like that's different. And they have a lot of that, and I think that's why I thought earlier when I was saying that it's just such a kind of out there record for a band to put as their first album. It's just so cool.
Yeah, and one of the things I did notice as well is that I now fully understand the criticism that people had of the first Power Waves album, in that it sounds just like the 1975, and I was like, and I was like, and I just kind of shrugged and stuff, and then listening to this album, it was like, okay,
oh yeah,
which is a bit of a shame, because my mind makes noises. Their first album, I like it. It's a great album.
Great record. Actually, I love it. I like it.
It's a I've got issues with it. It's a 3.5 star. Well, it was a 3.5 star. Listening to this album, it's now down to a 3 because I've realised how much it is influenced.
No.
But who am I? He's still Who am I? He's 5 out of 5. Trust me, their second album's 5 out of 5.
That's great. That's a great record too. But it's funny you mentioned Pale Waves. I want to talk about that. So it's like a reverse thing where you knew Pale Waves before you knew 1975, right? So like you knew Pale Waves way before that. You were a big fan of that band. It was the reverse for me, and so actually. My friend of mine showed me Pale Waves, and my instant reaction was, it's a female 1975, because he sent me My Mind Makes Noises, and I listened to it, and I was instantly ecstatic about it. But my text response was, "It's a female 1975. Oh my god!" And he was like, "Oh, cool. I'm glad you like it." But now that the way you're talking about it, it's really funny to think, oh yeah, it is super similar and very influenced by 1975. Sure,
Yeah.
I could totally see that. In my mind, I guess they're separate but together. I guess I like them both. Not equally, but I'd say very closely, because I think they are so similar that it's like an extension of one or the other.
Okay, I'm just gonna quickly fact check this, but I'm pretty sure that some of the 1975 may have had a hand in the production of My Mind Makes Noises. Actually, saying that.
Oh, really? Okay,
Yeah,
cool. That would make a lot of sense.
Producer George Daniel, Kiara Doran, Jonathan Gilmour, Matty Healy.
Oh wow. Okay.
Well, George Daniel and Matty Healy are actually the producers of There's a Honey and Television
really?
Romance. Okay, that's interesting. The producers of Television Romance. Television Romance was the first Power Waves song that I listened to, actually. Produced by George Daniel and Matty Healy as well.
Huh, that makes sense. I like both those songs a lot.
Yeah. So they do production on them, and that's the only thing. But I do think that perhaps there is a very genetic link to them. Yeah, I think they kind of like expand their sound for their second album, but they could break some away from that.
It does for sure. I think the Pale Waves have really evolved after that first record.
Yeah,
I mean, not that I love that album though, so I mean, it's always going to hold a place in my heart for sure. But they have evolved out of that, and I think they've done some really great stuff too.
Yeah, but interesting and. Heading it back to the 1975, some of the similar things as well is that the albums it's more or less the same length, and they've also got almost the same amount of songs. So there's 16 songs on here, and it's a 50-minute album. So there's not that many long songs on it, which is good. The only issue that I perhaps have with this album is that I think again it's slightly too long. I think you probably cut at least 3 or 4 out of them. For the songs, just to make it a lot tighter, because if anything that starts creeping up to the 45 minute mark for an album, I think, as you said,
I'm with you on that too. I have a feeling about that too. I agree that like there's a sweet spot for the length of an album, and that is the sweet spot as 45 minutes or so. There is a lot of filler in this album too. There's a lot of like stuff a lot of noises and tracks that are just like very empty in a way. So I think that's also playing to the whole concept, I guess, or the whole album as a whole. But it is, there probably is a few things you could cut out of there. I would say so too. As much as I love the album, I would say
it's very much like the opinions people have of Matty Healy, isn't it? As much as I love Matty, as much as I love Matty Healy, it's. But
yeah, totally.
You mentioned the word concept in terms of this album. So would you say there's a concept of this album around this album, or is it like a linking of ideas?
No, I think I just misspoke. I don't. I think there's maybe I could be wrong though. There is a lot of stuff that's very similar. Like I think that what he's writing about and speaking to is a lot of like stuff that I think what I liked about it lyrically is that he's talking about things that's like there's a lot of sex and drugs and partying, stuff like that. Songs, a lot of heartbreak, a lot of like self-deprecation, but it is kind of playing a whole story of like maybe growing up as a young man kind of stuff, where there's a lot of things that he sings about that I like wish maybe I had been smart enough or cool enough to do, or maybe adventurous enough to do as a young man, like mischievous and things like that. So it is maybe that could be a concept that kind of loosely there in that way. But
okay, so if we move to the actual songs themselves,
sure.
Songs themselves, which songs jump out that you definitely want to talk about?
Oh my god! So this part took me so long to figure out, because also when I was doing my research on this, like I told you earlier that the whole album itself, is really great. But what really hooked me was a lot of the extra stuff that was in that deluxe version, like the bonus stuff that is on there, which makes the album way longer. And so I started to pick out songs that I want to talk about. There's a few that I really love. The City is great. Robbers is awesome. I think Robbers has a really great story to it. Sex, Girls, Hard Out is one of my favorite songs. Pressure is really good. I could keep going, but that's my list so far. And that's like probably half the album,
Yeah, I think, interesting enough, they actually kind of released videos for at least half of the album, which I think is actually a thing with Dirty Hit, because I'm pretty sure half of each of the band that shall not be named albums have got videos. Because, for example, Blue Weekend is still having videos coming in. Or then again,
oh really?
I think they have actually music videos for every song, because it's a concept album itself. But
yes, yeah,
but Dirty Hit seems to have a very interesting thing to try and get as many singles out of an album as possible. I think
Definitely. I think you're right.
Biba Doobie and the Rena Sariel albums that I remember listening to, they have quite a few videos and singles. Some of the singles don't have videos either. They just have, or they have special versions of videos. For example, they managed to get Rena Sariel to debut with Elton John on a cover of Charles and Family on that album.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, so that's another special edition of a single that released and stuff. So don't you kind of know what they're doing when it comes to the videos and stuff? So
also, the videos are cool. The videos for this album, I'd say like probably my favorite one that I see is like Robbers has a really cool video, which actually like I didn't know the story of that song until I watched the video, and then I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. Okay, like.
Let's talk about Robbers a bit more detail then. So, so why was you drawn to that song? So what hooked you in when you were researching it?
Well, I mean, it's also lyrically, I think that the chorus is very good. It's also like I had a lot of fun to it, but it's also like kind of like the video showed me kind of what they were going for, right? So it's kind of like this Bonnie and Clyde type like love affair, these like bank robbers, or like not bank robbers, but robbers of some kind, and then they end up like getting killed, and it's kind of like this whole story of like these people, their love affair with it, and how they evolved through their time together, and then like the death of them, and it's just kind of like this cool. It was almost like a movie. That video is like a little short film on this like Bonnie and Clyde couple, which I think is really neat, and I like that. I like songs that are really story driven too. I think concept albums are some of my favorite. You've had like not to mention you've had bands on here on your show. Coheed and Cambria, like that are have had really concept driven records and things like that, which are really important to me and really like just something I really like. But yeah, so that's that song. I didn't understand some of the stuff at first. When lyrically he's kind of going about talking about how they kind of the story of the people, I guess, in the song, and I didn't really understand it. And then I'm watching this video and I go, oh, okay, it all makes sense. Like it all kind of comes together as this concept of like, oh, there's these robbers and that's what they're doing, and that's why he's talking about when she gets his gun and blah blah blah.
The Genius page, because like basically I usually have like Genius open when I'm recording these.
Okay, cool.
So there's a question on the page for this where he goes, "Is there anything Matty regrets about the music video for Robbers?" And he says that Matty shared some insights about what he'd do differently for the music video at their show in Toronto, stating, "I love Robbers, but if I could do it again, I would do it without the guns, because retrospectively, it feels a bit weird watching that scene as I'm more like, I stand for that stuff, but then here I am fucking around with a gun and all that. It's not really cool." So
yeah, I agree with that. That's awesome. Actually, I didn't know that quote. That makes a lot of sense, because I think that was when I'd first heard the song, you kind of get a different feel about it, right? And then when you watch the video, you learn about this whole robber aspect and then about the guns and stuff, and you're like, oh, okay. Because he also mentions like guns in other songs too, like Chocolate mentions, carrying guns or whatever, and it's like in a different way. But yeah, I like that he said that. I think that's really awesome, because it isn't like cool to be messing around with guns. I'm not a big fan of firearms myself, so I'm not a fan of that stuff. I'm very like anti-violence and things like that. But yeah.
So yeah, and in another quote on this page as well, because funny you say that you mentioned Bonnie and Clyde, because he says that Robbers was originally inspired from my love of the Quentin Tarantino film True Romance, the story of an Elvis-obsessed loner who falls in love and marries a prostitute. It talks about the movie and stuff, but a bit later on in the quote, he then says, "Characters like Bonnie and Clyde always appealed to me as a teenager. Couples so intoxicated with one another, they fear nothing in the pursuit of the realisation of each other. Actions fueled by blind, unconditional love. Robbers is an ode to those relationships, the type of relationship all humans long for, all or nothing. This video is about love that makes two people feel they're essentially the universe." So it's kind of like that kind of like, so where you can have all this stuff happening around you, all this extraordinary stuff like, I don't know, like a robbery and all this stuff, but the main focus is the centre of the universe is still them, and anything around it is kind of superfluous to everything else and stuff.
Yes, yeah.
But yeah, so it's that's kind of like quite of an interesting song to choose from. So you mentioned Chocolate, because I wanted to talk about Chocolate. So Chocolate is the one, I think it's got the most plays on Spotify. And
oh, absolutely. Yeah. That's like the hit off this album. It's probably not my favorite song on the record, but it's great. It's a good song. Yeah. And
interestingly enough as well, is that so got guns hidden under our petticoats. It's so the word on the Genius annotation, which is petticoats. If you click on it, it goes to a video where Matty Healy starts talking about it. The first comment is someone who, and this has got a minus 868 score, so you know what's coming. He goes, I used to love you guys, but then realised you're a minus twat.
That's awesome. Oh man.
But I think, and I can't remember what he said. Because it's a video. But then basically everyone else was saying, going, it's not petticoat, it's chocolate. It's not petticoat, it's petticoat. So basically a bunch of people are actually trying to correct Matty Healy for saying it's the word petticoat, not petticoat.
Oh my gosh.
Petticoats and stuff. But I just saw that and I just burst out laughing because I'm like, that is great. Yeah, and that was 7 years ago. But yeah, the song Chocolate, which they said, apparently, Matty Healy said it's a love letter to the authority figures in our town. You now smoke small town boredom, both by the kids and the police. But apparently the word chocolate is just used instead of the word cocaine, because apparently he used to be. Oh, really? Yeah. I didn't know that. I mean, I actually, it's funny I didn't know that because I'm all about the drug references in this album. but that's not one I knew, and that's interesting. It makes sense now that we're talking about it because I always wondered kind of what the chocolate was in this song, and that's maybe why I didn't. I like the energy of it, I like the beat of it, I like the song itself. No, but I never quite got that. Sorry, I tell a lie. I think it's not cocaine. Sorry, it's weed. It's marijuana. Oh, yeah. Okay. So, well, that makes more sense because it's the smell of it, right? I mean, you do smell cocaine, but you don't really smell it. You know, it's the action. It doesn't have a smell to it. Where marijuana has the smell to it for sure, and that's that makes a lot more sense. Yeah, and like funny as well is that the authorised annotation for the song, call it a split because you know that you will. 1975, which I'm assuming it's Matty talking about that. It's saying the lyrics call it a split. There has been much debate surrounding this line, arguing that I'm actually saying spliff. That is not the case. It is split. Is it? Yeah. So basically, it must be people singing "Call it a spliff" rather than "Call it a split." But I think isn't it the same thing? I mean, I don't know. Maybe there's a difference. Yeah, I'm not sure. But I think some people. I'm not sure. Some people are saying I think it's a split or splitting the cost of drugs between two or more people. So interesting. Interesting. That makes a lot more sense. Yeah, I think actually I probably called it spliff. I probably said spliff. It's one of those things. Yeah, it's one of those things where the misheard lyric is better than the other one. I'm not. Yeah, so it's like the Black Parade, and Cynical. Believe me, I'm not gonna. Yeah, well, I think it's a better song than Gerard. It's a better lyric than what Gerard Way wrote, I think. But so Spliff is probably better than Split. Oh, I think this album has a lot of those. This album has a lot of those, misinterpretations where you could easily, I mean, just the way he sings and the style he sings, the translation too, I guess probably for the U.S. as well, where we're like, oh man, I hear Spliff, I'm gonna sing that. The song has a lot of those things where I'm like, oh, I have my own version of it, and then that's what it's in my head forever, and it's gonna be that way. Yeah. So, like what, for example? I'm quite curious. Well, I'm trying to think. I was trying to think of another version or another song on the album that has that, but I think I can't quite boil it down to get one. But I'm sure if I could look up some lyrics right now, I'd go, oh yeah, I didn't think that's what he said. But yeah, so but again, the song "Chocolate" it's got that kind of admittedly it is quite catchy, so it's got that kind of like, no, we're never going to quit it. When you think about it, yeah, it makes sense when it's actually about cocaine rather than chocolate. But then again, though, it's innocent. Well, I'd say it's innocent enough. I mean, like if it's on the radio, then like you can kind of get away with it saying it's about chocolate. Yeah, exactly. And stuff. But it is super catchy though. That's like the whole album has a lot of catchy songs on it. Like I think the way their choruses go, the way their hooks go, like City has a lot of that same stuff where it's super catchy. You want to find love, well, you know where the city is. Like that song has a lot of that too. Chocolate's got that. Sex, Girls, Heart Out, all of that has those same kind of things. They kind of have the same style, I guess. The flow, I guess, a lot of the songs. But that's also what I love about them. I love that catchiness. I love those hooks that make me just want to dance around and sing to it. Yeah. So it's quite interesting, and they talk about the self-deprecation of the lyrics and stuff, and it's basically, well, you got loads of rap songs that are probably about weed and stuff, but this is like a interesting mix of I don't want to say poetry, but using metaphor to try and talk about druggies, or at least smoking weed anyway. Whereas like you'll have like rap artists like, I mean, I was a massive Band Thugs and Harmony fan, and they've got songs called The Bud Smokers Only, and or Buddha Lover, or Buddha Lover, and all that kind of stuff. So it's So I'll give him points to try and be a bit more subtle in the.
Yeah, I like that too. I think that's also kind of a fun part of it. You know, when you think about, he does the same thing too, with not just drugs, but with sex. When they mention that type of stuff, you know, in like the song "Girls" and in sex, like those, they're very like ambiguous, I guess. Now they kind of try to hit those notes home, even though you know that's what they're talking about. You know, talking about drugs and sex and things like that. But it's very clean, you know, radio friendly in a way, I guess too. But.
Yeah. So, what songs do you want to? Another song that you want to talk about?
Hard Out is probably one of my favorite songs. I like that song a lot. I'm not sure if you dug it or not, but
Heart Out, I remember.
The chorus to that is really cool.
Heart Out beat I can remember because because I'm currently off 2 weeks off work, I was able to, one of the rare things I was able to do with this, like earlier this afternoon, I was able to actually go for a walk and listen to this while walking, and I don't usually get a chance to do that with most of the albums on here because of work and stuff, but and from where I live, there's a particularly steep hill on this like circuit around this large park that living nearby, and there's a very quite kind of steep climb, and I think this is a song that started coming in because the beat started coming in. I ended up finding myself walking to the beat of this up this very steep hill, and it nearly bloody hell killed me. which is quite concerning. Which is quite concerning because I'm a bloody runner as well. So I don't know why walking up a hill that I've ran up a low 100 times.
That's funny. I was just gonna say that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was gonna say I have no idea why this song. It's not a particularly fast song either. But sometimes you get caught in the rhythm of it and.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Also, this song has a lot of coolness. I mean, the chorus is great. You know, it's when they say like, "It's just you and I tonight. Why don't you figure my heart out?" But also, like, I love that they bring the saxophone into this song. That's one of my favorite parts too. And it's like they have the sax solo that's singing those lyrics or whatever, and that's always really fun too. But the beat is just really catchy. The lyrics are catchy. I could see how you could find yourself, speed walking to it or something, going on with it. And then also it's going to catch you off guard because your mind is like not knowing what you're doing, right? But your body's just moving with the beat.
Yeah. It was like going out of breath. It was like, my heart's about to fall out. My heart was going to start beating, and it's like, because if I suddenly have a heart attack to a song called Heart Out, I thought because the 1975 would be the death of me.
Oh, I love that. That's one of my favorite songs on there. Girls is really great. Pressure is another really good song, which is I think the second to last track is Pressure on the album before all the bonus stuff. And it's just like the way he's singing it. Like, I think there's like kind of a lot of like, like we talked about self-deprecation, but there's a lot of love in this album too. Like Hard Out's very heartfelt and loving and caring, and then Pressure's got the same kind of thing where lyrically is there's a change in pressure. I'm never gonna lie to you. All those kind of lyrics that hit you. That make you kind of make your feels go off and make you kind of go, okay, wow, like that's so sweet. I like that. I like the line they have there. The way that would be applied to a relationship or to with your partner or whoever is cool.
Yeah, so Pressure. I think Pressure kind of for me fell victim to the point of it's track 15 of a 16-track song, and it kind of gets lost. Gets lost at the end. Towards the end for me, I think like after about like all the 14 songs, and sometimes the sound you kind of meld into each other, because I think this appears after the last track, and the last track is very striking because it's just like a piano, quiet style piano song. So it kind of,
I love that song. Yeah,
which is what's it called? Is there someone who can watch over you? I think this this is one of those songs that kind of gets lost in the sequence for me, just because I think it's just before like the biggest version of the album. Just saying as well, because I think if I the lyrics, I'm actually remembering how it sounds now, but yeah. So I think it's a bit of a shame. I think it's one of it's a victim of its track placing.
I agree with that. Well, the funny thing is this album is like start to finish. It starts off really heavy and fun. Like you get The City, you get Chocolate, you get Sex, Girls. All those songs where it's like, it really catches you and gets you going. And then, like you said, you do kind of lose your focus on the album as it progresses, and then there's a couple like instrumental songs and slow songs in there that kind of bring you back down, and that kind of encourages you to lose focus on it. So I have to kind of remain focused because I have my favorite tracks at the end that kind of come up like pressure, and like Is There Someone Who Can Watch You actually is a really emotional song to me. It means a lot to me. I love that song. It's very even though it's just only like a couple minutes long, I think it's maybe, I don't know, 2 minutes long or something, but it's a really beautiful little piano song, and I think when Matthew Healy gets deep like that, it's something that I really enjoy. He has that on probably every record too, but yeah, I could see how you would have how you'd lose, how these songs would just get lost in the mix, because it does start off the album itself starts off so full of energy, and then it just kind of like you can't maintain that.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at is there someone to watch over you and stuff, and it's guys, we should ring Dad more, and apparently it's so I don't really know much about his personal life or his relationship with his dad and stuff, but again, seeing that, it's just weird to me that it's a song that mentions about which is about Dennis from Of We the Same Pet. It's just mind-blowing, but again, I think it's just it's a kind of reminder that you got kind of like these performances or these people that you see, or like or as you said earlier, the kind of the performance of Matty Healy, the lead singer, rather than Matthew Healy, the guy behind it. I think it's quite easy to forget that perhaps song lyrics, you got these you got the showmen, the show people who are actually writing about the person behind that. So where you've got Matty Healy performing this song, but it's actually about Matthew Healy. Yes,
exactly. I think every album he has some kind of a personal touch. There's another album that he has where they have a song about like his grandmother, and it's kind of very similar to Is There Somebody Who Can Watch You? And the what I like about this record, I had a great relationship with my father, and I lost him a few years ago, and the way that he kind of Is There Somebody Who Can Watch You talks about, just like, I think there's kind of references to like just using your parents' house for a place to go do your laundry and things like that. But then it's like, oh no, we should actually like, be around them more and be part of their life. And I think that's a cool story to tell. And the fact that, he is kind of writing it about himself, maybe, I don't know what the story is behind it as far as his relationship with his parents, but I think that's a really cool song. I think they do a lot of that too. And like every record kind of has this kind of like sentimental piece to it. And like, I'm a big sentiment fan, like the Sad Bastard music kind of comes at me that way. And this is one of the songs that I would just define as Sad Bastard music from the start,
Yeah. So it's it's definitely striking as well, particularly after like the 40 odd minutes of like kind of like the indie pop and stuff. So to suddenly have this piano and stuff, it kind of like brings it. But it's a finale. But I think it's a finale, so it's different because it's different, and it's a finale, and you can kind of bring into that. Kind of like it kind of cuts the end, so you know that you finished this chapter of the chapter of the band, more or less. So it's
absolutely totally
So I want to quickly ask a question, because again, ask you a question about the song "The 1975", because I read something about it, and I had to go and double check. And it's one of those rare things where I venture onto other albums so apparently they have every other album opens with a song called "The 1975". And
correct.
I didn't have a chance to listen to the other ones, but I couldn't tell whether it's the same motif, what's similar about them, or if are they all different, or
they're very similar. I think lyrically, I could be wrong here. I need to check it out, but lyrically, I think it's like 90% the same, but just the flow of it and the style of it is kind of like this soft opener, right? So just like with this album where it opens softly with this quiet music and the quiet vocals, every record has that like whoosh intro where they kind of just like slowly build and then bring you to the album. And I think that's really cool. It's something I think it again goes to the like performance of the album and like their style. But yeah, every song has the 1975 title track, or not the title track, but I mean the opening track.
Okay. So I've done a quick look. I think the lyrics are the same.
I think so too.
Yes. Well, no, actually, I think
they're like very, very similar, and I think that the sound varies. I think as the album per each album, but it's kind of still the same slow build, quiet style. It's not like it's a different I'd say their second album. I Like It When You Sleep, For You're Beautiful But So Unaware of It. I think that album is a totally different kind of not totally different musically, but it's a lot different than this first record. But the song 1975, the opener, is very similar, which I think is cool.
Oh, okay. So it's technical. So you could say it's the opening title sequence. So, like, you know, like it's like how TV series, like, well, you don't really
like
get
the opening
them
credits.
Yeah. So, like, you don't really get you don't get them in modern TV series like the last 10 years or something. But like, I remember a time where like you get really excited at the start of a new season where you'll have like, for example, one of my favourite shows, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. The title sequence will be different because they've used all these new kind of things. You'll see who the cast sequence is, but then and sometimes they'll kind of rejig the title sequence music just to kind of like polish it and stuff. So it's like that, but in music form.
It totally is. Like, I think there's like a show that I really like. There's on HBO called The Wire. Has that where like every season has the same song but covered by different artists, kind of thing. And it's very cool. And I think that's it is kind of like that nostalgic thing. Like, ooh, you know what you're gonna get. You know,
Weeds. The show Weeds actually every episode was the song Little Boxes but covered by someone else. But yeah, The Wire.
Yes, I thought that was very cool.
Down in the Hole is the name of the song actually, because I think Tom Waits. It is. I think Tom Waits is one of the series. I think.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
I think he was maybe in the original one, first season. I don't know, but yeah, that's a great song, and the way they did that for every season is really cool. Very similar, and I like that applying it to your records is. As far as a band, I think it's kind of interesting to do because it's almost like not something you would do, right? As a band, like we're not going to have this intro on every album. That's silly, but no, actually, it works really well, and it kind of makes them unique in a way too.
Yeah, it's like I can't think of any other. The only other thing I think of is perhaps going to rap music of all places, like where they'll have repeated characters. The Eminem albums, the Slim Shady LP and Marshall Mathers LP start with the public service announcement, and I think it comes back again in the future. I can't remember which one exactly, but like it goes, it's like this is a public service announcement from Slim Shady, or this is public service announcement. So, so there's like a kind of thematic link between the albums and stuff. But that's the only thing I can think. I can't think of any other albums that do that or bands that do that. Anyone knows of any? Let me know.
No, I think some bands I know that I know bands that do similar things, but not music intros. Like I know bands that maybe do God, now I'm spacing out right now. The band American Football. They have all of their album covers are like for the first three records, the album cover had this similar like style of like it was like a house and a door and a window. Just like kind of like they try to apply something that's linking this like sequential growth or whatever, but.
Recurring motif.
As far as musically, there you go.
Yeah, well, so I think like Weezer have like all the, apart from a couple of diversions, they'll have like the Blue album, the Green album, other albums that I can't remember the names of. Pretty much other colour albums I think they've got. But so the album received favourable reviews from contemporary music critics, according to Wikipedia, and Metacritic gave it a score of 67 based on 17 reviews. So some of the positive ones, Ashley Clements from Gigwise called the album quite possibly the best indie LP of the year. Simon Butcher of The Clash rated the album 8 out of 10 and wrote it's a great pop record with plenty of depth. That will prove divisive. Some will dismiss this band in one listen or none as the next L City, but with years of playing together already, plenty of fans, a lot of songs to go, the 1975 will be an overnight success that will lead the critics. I do not get that L City.
I don't get that at all. No, that doesn't make sense.
L City are a postal service tribute band.
That doesn't click to me at all.
No.
Interesting. Okay.
You could tangibly link some of the sound of the 1975 to be a lot more polished and radio friendly version of Death Cab. But I think Death Cab for Cutie. It's
a stretch.
But I think because Owl City is a carbon copy of the Postal Service, but I would say that
100%.
I can't see the Postal Service in this, apart from perhaps no, because there's no beeps or bloops or anything. It's all
just like the digital. Like there's some electronic sounds in there and stuff, but that's still a stretch for me.
Yeah. So interestingly as well. Dave Reynolds of Beard magazine noticed similarities between the bands and Michael Jackson's story and wrote that the unmistakable 80s aesthetic reflects a homage to Thriller. A debut album with 16 tracks should never be able to capture and hold a listener's attention, but the 1975 make a damn good stab at it with a record listed with pop hooks and imaginations. MJ would be proud.
Okay. That's also another stretch link. I don't get it.
Yeah, I mean, So again, I apologise for bringing Michael Jackson up. If anyone, you can skip the next few minutes if anyone doesn't want to talk about Michael Jackson. But the link to Thriller I've seen somewhere else, which I remember reading. But again, it's the Thriller / Def Leppard Animal type thing, where someone tries to make singles out of every track, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Again, I think it's something that's kind of brought up in the Cars episode a couple of weeks ago. In that, like, every song could potentially be a hit, which I want to say. But in terms of sound, I mean, apart from the fact that it's emulating a sound from the same decade, I can't see. No, I can't see that either and stuff. But,
I can't see it at all. I think maybe that person had that box they wanted to fit this, and like, oh, I need to find an album that has this many tracks that fits this Thriller theme, and here's what I'm going to call it.
Yeah,
because that doesn't seem to click.
And the last thing I'm going to mention is the review from Q, because I ended up double checking what the bands they mention. Possibly the first band to take influence from the Thompson Twins, China Crisis, and the long lost Frasier Chorus. That makes them sound gloriously out of kilter. Frasier Chorus are actually kind of I've never heard of before, and they sound like a kind of like 1980s version of indie pop, which I really, really like. And I'm like, cool. So they're kind of like jangly kind of almost tweet music, which I really quite like. China Crisis, I couldn't remember what they sounded like, but the Thompson Twins, they did the. I can't remember the name of the song, but it's the "Hold Me Now." That song. Yeah. And as soon as I clicked on search them and saw that song, I'm like, yeah, I can see that. Kind of like
I can see it.
It's the 80s sad bastard music.
It is exactly.
But and that kind of led me towards the kind of like the Manchester kind of aspect, and it's. I mean, they're not, but I mean the 1975. There was the wrong word. Aren't as dark, but I can kind of see a strong influence of Ian Curtis, Joy Division aspect of it. Yeah, absolutely. But with a lot more game, with a bit more jangle in the rather than more jangle, less drone. And I don't mean that as a negative. I don't mean drone as a negative. No, because
I know what you mean. I agree.
Yeah, I agree. And from that as well, they kind of also, and the final thing that from that is that. The sound almost very similar to a band I absolutely love called We Are Performance, who are from Manchester. If anyone's listened to I kind of guested on a podcast called Over Underrated, and I argued for this band's underratedness, and they're from Manchester as well. But they're a lot more they're very synthy. They're a lot more synthy, a lot more self-deprecating.
Okay. I'm taking so many notes on bands to listen to.
It's just basically a list of bands I mentioned yet. But one of my favourite albums of all time is from that band as well. But they're a lot more synthy. They're kind of like very much like a darker Killers as well, the kind of thing. So, but I can kind of see that kind of mixture stuff. But and earlier on in the recording that I didn't mention either, there was. There was like notes that I got from, again, the Wikipedia, where public reaction to the band's music has been mixed, particularly on social platforms like Twitter. So, according to Vice magazine's Larry Fitzmaurice in 2016, in an essay on the critical response, he has said they've been described as the most hated and loved band in the world, and described as underrated and overhyped through the needle as underrated and overhyped, although the needle has far more swung towards the former direction. So it's So again, it's like it's the Marmite of bands where like people either love them or hate them, and like in equal measure.
Absolutely.
Equal measure.
Yeah, absolutely.
But saying that so I was trying to figure out whether there was a hit or not, and I was like, oh, none of the songs had like really broken the top 20 in the UK, and then I suddenly looked at the album performance, and this album got to number 1. In fact, every other subsequent album of theirs in the UK,
all of theirs have, yes.
I don't know about the US, but in the UK they've reached number 1. So in the States, it's actually gone platinum in the States, selling 1 million units. It's gone 2 times platinum in the UK, gone gold in Denmark, and also gold in Australia. Again, as I always have to say, the metric is different because of the population and stuff, but
absolutely,
so it's at least 10,000 units in Denmark and 35,000 in Australia, whereas 600,000 in the UK. So it's it's done quite well. for itself, and they can sell out. Don't have to sell out arenas, but they are touring in arenas.
They are touring in arenas. Actually, it's crazy. I've had the last chance I've had to see them, I think, was a big arena show. I didn't get to go to that show, but I have seen them live before. But I in a much smaller venue. Well, actually, only once. It was actually immediately after I looked up. I looked it up because I was I was interested to talk about it and think about it. But after I first heard them on like that, iTunes festival thing, and I kind of fell in love with them as a band and downloaded their MP3s and like listened to them like crazy. They were touring on this album like immediately in the U.S. and they were in Seattle, and I live in Washington State, so I'm actually on the opposite side of the state. It's about like a 4-hour drive, but I found tickets to their concert. I saw them for $15 in this tiny little bar called Numos. It's in Seattle. It's like kind of like a punk rock club, and it was like there was probably 25, 30, maybe 50 people tops, in this venue to see them. Really intimate, small show. I was, of course, like fanboying super hard and like got there early and like slept in my car to like wait outside to like get to be in line to try to meet them and hang out, which didn't happen. But the show was excellent. They were awesome. They sounded super good. And then they came to my town a couple of years later, and they were playing a venue that I didn't want to go see because the sound really sucked, and I regret that decision. There's a few years where I boycotted a certain venue because I didn't like the atmosphere and the sound of it, but a lot of great bands went there. So I regret that if I regret anything in life, it's maybe not going to those shows at that venue.
Birmingham has one of the biggest venues in there. It's not an arena; it's one of the biggest shows. I don't know the company O2. It's a mobile phone company. I don't know much in the US, but no. But the O2 group own like a chain of venues. So like you have the O2 Academy Birmingham, you have the O2 Academy Manchester, the O2 Academy. So you got like Islington. So I've been to a few. Similar. Yeah, like there's one in Manchester. There's two in Birmingham. There's the O2 Academy and the O2 Institute, which used to be the HMV Institute, which used to be the Barfly. And so the O2 Institute's the good one. The O2 Academy is bloody awful. So it's and I mean I will see bands in that room, but it's not a good venue. But I know people who will not go and see bands because it's in that venue and stuff. But and I did that for a few years, and I'm actually I think what changed my mind was probably the pandemic, honestly, where I'm like, no, I need to see live music again. I don't care where it is. I think that kind of changed my focus. I was like trying to I'm like I'm slowly now my I used to I had an Excel spreadsheet which like tracks all my like gig history and stuff, and I only recently discovered that the pivot table function in Google Sheets is automatic rather than having to kind of manually force this stuff. And as long-term listeners know, I'm a massive fan of spreadsheets. So I finally translated my gig. I'm translating my kind of gig history to Google Sheets, and I've now managed. Cool. I've got counters that count how many times I've seen a certain artist and how many times I've been to a certain venue. How many times I've seen. It's like how many times I've seen an artist perform and how many times I've seen them in a headline slot. And I'm like, that's awesome. Yeah, but it's been like that. It was like a year before I could actually add anything to it. So I finally started adding stuff to it, and I've managed to now tell me. So I've now got a counter of how many days and stuff, and it's like, yay, gigs again. So
I know it's exciting.
So I used to keep all the emails of like all the gig tickets still, because I'm one of these weird people that clear their inbox of only emails they need. So I've got and it's usually my calendar and emails have got the colour purple next to them. So whenever anything's purple, it's to do with gigs I'm going to, and like my inbox has now got about 6 or 7 kind of like different emails for gigs and stuff, and it's
yes, that's exciting. Yes, I know. I'm feeling the same way. I'm super excited about that. Now it's like to the point where I'm like, I don't care where it is, I don't care what venue. I want to see live music again. I'm super excited for it. So
but I say I've not seen the 1975, but I do have a kind of memory. I was on the train back from London, so I think I was in London overnight, and I was coming back, and this was February 2020. I was coming back on the train because I'd just I went to go and watch the 10th anniversary of my favourite album of all time, performed by my favourite band, which I'm not going to say in the podcast. Anyone who follows me on Instagram probably immediately guess what it is, but it's a future. But it's a certain episode. It's the world's. If anyone knows me, it's the world's worst kept secret. But I was coming back from that. So I was on the train from London into Birmingham. And I think we stopped off to like Northampton or something, and like coming into Birmingham New Street Station, and I was like half asleep. And then this was like in the afternoon. I was like half asleep, and I could hear like there must have been either there's either the youngest 17, oldest 19, definitely not in their 20s. There's like this like group, these two girls just talking about this gig they was going to at the arena, and it was in 1975. But
of course.
yeah. But there's like, yeah. So there's just talk. So for about half an hour, I had like all this conversation about Matty, and I was like, Matty Healy, like, and again, my knowledge of the 1975 wasn't as big. Wasn't really that much. I think I know more about him now, but I was like, but then I started talking about who the support was, and the support was Power Waves. And they was trying to work out if they'd seen him or not, and like, and there was actually, and it pissed a few other people off because they started actually googling the YouTube videos, the music videos on their phones, and started playing them loud and stuff.
Of course, out loud,
yeah. Right, an older guy behind him was like, "Just turn that shit off." And I'm there actually quite enjoying it. I'm just kind of like relaxing, like
You're like, I like this music. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, because like this is actually quite relaxing. They're choosing other nice, relaxing, quiet songs they're playing through that and stuff. But yeah, I just remember that. But there was going to.
That's funny.
And interestingly enough, as well, is that in front of them, a girl turned around and goes, "You seen the 1975?" And like, yeah, and just same age girl on her own, travelling from like Northampton on her own, going to go on her own. First time she ever went to a gig on her own, just turned around, going to, and basically made new friends to go to the gig with on that train stuff.
Yes.
So yeah,
I love that.
Yeah. So it's kind of so that and. So yeah, I had that written down. I wanted to mention that on here, but I quite like that story. Like,
that's a great memory. Yes,
yeah.
I love
so like,
it.
and I'm just kind of like eavesdropping, half asleep on the other side of the train carriage where that comes in. But
oh man,
yeah,
I've been that person before. So I've been that person going to see a band and meeting people that are going to see that same band, and it's awesome. Like I think that's part of what brings people together is music, and that's what I love about music too, is that it translates so well and is such a bonding experience thing. So that's a very cool story.
Yeah. So okay. So people listen to the 1975, and where would you recommend they go next in the discography?
Oh man, so I knew that question was going to come up. And, I'm actually really torn about their later albums. I mean, so I love them all, but it took me a while to get into some of them. Like I guess what I would say for people to follow through is just kind of chronologically follow them, because it's actually really a really nice evolution of them as a band. So their next album, I think, is I Like It When You Sleep, For You Are So Beautiful Yet So Unaware of It, and that's a really great record with a lot of good songs on it. But then their one after that is A Brief Inquiry into Online Relationships, which actually was the one that I most recently fell in love with, even though it's been around for a while. I think it came out in 2018 or something like that. It's their third album. It actually is really, really good, but it's also very experimental and weird, and has some stuff that's kind of, I wouldn't tell you to go there next because you're probably not going to like it. But if you give it a good listen after listening to the other stuff, it'd probably be a good album to hear.
Okay, so carry on this way. So we're now as we're getting up to the end of our conversation, we're now at the very important question, which is the song for the playlist. For people who've not listened to this before, what this is I'll ask Rylan to choose one song from this album to go onto the playlist and be immortalised forever. I can't veto it, so whatever Rylan chooses will go on there. So Rylan, what are you going to add to the playlist?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so does that have to be from the record itself, or can it be from like the deluxe version and the extended songs? Because that's going to change my opinion.
The original one, because I'm not listening to the deluxe one.
Okay, that's okay. That's great. I'm going to pick Pressure. It's a great song. I like it a lot. So I think it'd be a good addition to the playlist. It's a great song. I think it's catchy. It's fun. It's got some good lyrics to it, so kind of a love song. So yeah, cool. I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah. Well, no, I've written it down on a piece of paper, so I've written it down now.
Oh, it's finalized.
It's finalized now. So yeah, I say I can't veto it, but once you've said it, I can't. So Rylan, we've come to the end of our chat about the 1975. So if people want to find you and find your podcast, where can they find you?
Oh man, so they can find me on Instagram. My handle is Punch Drunk Rylan. My podcast is Punch Drunk Vinyl. It's about two guys that talk about music and vinyl and depression and anxiety and a lot of weird stuff. We're just two dudes chatting. So it's an interesting podcast. Maybe check it out if you like that type of stuff. But yeah, you can find me there. You can send me band recommendations, things like that. I would love that. I've already made a big list of things from you, Matt. So that's awesome. Also, I'm so stoked to be on your show. This is like it's like a bucket list thing for me. I had this nervous energy all day, all of yesterday, just this excitement that's built that I'm like, okay, cool, I get to be a guest on Pick a Disc now. This is great. I've been, ever since I've been following your podcast, I really liked it. And I've also the whole time been like, what would I pick? What would I do if I'm on there? And so I'm just like, I'm ecstatic. I'm like I'm so happy to be on the show. So I love it, man. Thank you.
Oh no, it's fine. Thank you. I'm really humbled you said that as well. So, but I totally get that. I mean, there's like podcasts I've listened to for years and years and years where I'm like, if I ever got on here, this is what I'd pick, and like, and then like, okay, yeah, like where like there's a couple of ones that are about mixtapes and stuff. I'm like, if I was on that, what would I pick and stuff, and yeah, like so yeah, I totally understand that. So yeah. You're not alone on that one, but again, thank you ever so much for coming on, and finally getting me to sit down and listen to the 1975 and just really like figuring out who they are.
I'm super happy that I think I might have said it earlier. It was a band that part of why I picked it too, which is maybe this is silly, but I was like, oh, he's going to know who they are. Like in my head, I was like, he's going to know this band. Matt's going to like them. Like he's already going to be a fan. That'll be a good conversation. And so when you were like, oh, it'll make me listen to it, I was like, no way. Cool. Like, you know,
yeah.
I was like, sweet. Like I get to give this to Matt. Yeah. Cool. Like I was really happy with that. And so it's made it for a lot of fun. You know? Very, very cool.
But yeah, I think I never listened to about 3 bands, so it's fine. So, but yeah, again, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's been excellent. I just love it so much.
You've been listening to Pick a Disc, and I've been your host, Matthew Latham. Our theme music is Pump by Kevin MacLeod of Incompetech.com. Pick a Disc is hosted by the We Made This podcast network, and you can find them on www.spreaker.com/user/WeMadeThis. You can find the Pick a Disc show site on www.spreaker.com/show/pickadisc. You can find us on all the usual social media type places like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter under Pick a Disc. You can also email us on pickadisc@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening to all those discs that you are picking. Goodbye.
Hello everyone, this is Tony, Network Chief of We Made This. As you know, our podcast network brings together a brilliant assortment of talent who talk about all kinds of pop culture content, such as the episode you've just listened to, or maybe you're just about to listen to. We're not going anywhere, but we'd love to keep the lights on for even longer if you're able to support our network on Patreon. For just £2 a month, you get your name in lights and the satisfaction of knowing you're helping us produce more great audio. And for £3 a month, you'll get your name in lights, but you'll also get access to an exclusive bi-monthly podcast from the We Made This talent pool on podcasting, pop culture, and, well, you tell us. We'll take your suggestions. For less than the price of a coffee per month, you can help keep We Made This going. Just head to patreon.com/We Made This. That's patreon.com/We Made This. And get the ball rolling. Now, back to your scheduled programming.
Elsewhere on We Made This.
3 with this month's issue.
This is Fruit Tree and Red Flower Girl. This is a band that are so fucking difficult to Google because they've got such a generic name. I was trying to Google Fruit Tree metal band and ended up with a load of results for like little metal bands to attach fruit trees to sticks to help them grow.
Oh right, send me a link to those.
The name being so generic, as I was doing my research, Esme from Hide From Time podcast had put up a post on Twitter about she was trying to do research for her forthcoming episode that she was doing, where there's a black metal band called Spiral Staircase. And she was trying to Google black metal spiral staircase and just getting black metal spiral staircases, which I thought was quite funny because it was exactly the same situation.
Well, I'm glad someone else suffered the same pain as you.
Yes, absolutely.
They were fantastically on Casket, which is the record label that offered my old band the deal as well, and we did not take it.
Right in the childhood.
But what I will say is, I did like watching Hannah Montana the first or second time. When we had to watch the same episodes over and over again, that was when young Fraser was not very happy about that. For some reason, I've grown out of that. I'll rewatch stuff over and over again. Like, I can't count how many times I've watched How I Met Your Mother. But a younger Fraser,
I can count how many times I've watched How I Met Your Mother.
Once.
Each episode, one time. And do you know how many times I intend to watch each episode?
Just once.
One time.
Real talk. We made this movie show.
You know, with all the water around, you know, like we're in a noir. I want to see steaming streets. You know, have the streets with all this moisture. Have that evaporating during the day in the intense heat. Like, you know, represent some of this stuff a little bit more visually, because, you know, it felt like she went halfway or 3/4 of the way to a lot of this really cool stuff and didn't quite cross the finish line with some of it.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.